It's a lot of fun. And musicians are so easy to work with and very, very generous with their time, their talents. And so, what's not to like? And yeah, we're a nonprofit. We are not trying to make money. If we break even, we're happy. We're sad if we don't, but it seems to be working well. Our jazz education program started as a program. The first year that I took over, I went to Roland Grice School. And next year, our 40th, we're concentrating on the young musicians, what Jazz Is magazine calls the rising stars, and Downbeat magazine calls them the young lions of jazz. Mm-hmm. Now, I was saying this to my trombone player, and he said, yeah, I call them the young jackals nipping at my heels, which, yeah, they are getting there, getting ready to be the next generation. But I think it's great to show that there are young people that are really good, that are going to keep jazz alive. I started hiring them last year so that I could have something to put into our program that was sort of a teaser. Come and see so-and-so next year. And so, and that has helped, because in our program, we had who the main event on Thursday night will be next year. Oh yes, Charlie has been involved in it, oh gosh, not from the beginning, but shortly, a few years later, through his wife, because she was a friend of a friend that was on the board. But the one that's been in it the longest is our treasurer, Ren Williamson. He wasn't a volunteer, he was drafted, because it was his father-in-law that was Dr. Van Velser. Oh. And so he didn't have any choice. But I am so glad that he is still a part of it, because he is a very important part of it. Desi was on my board when I was with the Jazz Society. And when I moved over to do the Jazz Festival, I brought some of the people I invited that were on my board there to come and be a part of the festival, because we worked well together, and that's important. And I thought they had something to give to the festival. Well, back about 40 years ago, a little more, Dr. Harry Van Velser, who was a dermatologist here in town and a lover of Dixieland music, decided to give himself a birthday present. And he invited 3 musicians from New York City to come up and play for his birthday. He had such a good time, he wanted to do it the next year. And then after a few years, he decided that he would start a jazz festival. So his friends and followers of these musicians came here, and it got started. And we've been doing it ever since. I'm trying to think when it was he decided that he was ready to step down. And so I've been doing it for about 14 years. Well, my husband and I attended several years ago when Dr. Van Velser was running it. And we went a couple of times. We weren't really big Dixieland fans, and so we were there, as I say, we went a couple of times, and then I hadn't been for quite a few years. My husband passed away. As I say, I am not a huge Dixieland fan. I love a little bit of it, but I like all kinds of jazz. So when he asked me to come on his board, I said to him, I'm not a really big Dixieland fan. And he said, that's okay. You like jazz, and I like the idea that you know how to hire jazz musicians. And so I really would like you to come on the board. So that was when I was still president of the Jazz Society. And I came on the board, then decided that that was too much doing both. And so I stopped doing the Jazz Society. I'm still a member, and I still am. But I just devote my energies to the North Carolina Jazz Festival. And next year, our 40th, we're concentrating on the young musicians, what Jazz's magazine calls the rising stars, and Downbeat magazine calls them the young lions of jazz. I was saying this to my trombone player, and he said, yeah, I call them the young jackals nipping at my heels, which, yeah, they are getting there, getting ready to be the next generation. But I think it's great to show that there are young people that are really good, that are going to keep jazz alive. Our jazz education program started as a program. The first year that I took over, I went to Roland Grice School. They had a really great violin section, and I spoke to the woman who was in charge of that because we had Jonathan Russell, who was then 11, as our jazz violinist. He was truly a prodigy, and he was fantastic. And so I wanted to bring him to the school that had the biggest violin group. And so that's when we started our jazz education program. We did it just at Roland Grice for a couple of years. And it wasn't just Jonathan we brought there. We brought 7 musicians there. And they talked about what jazz is, what each individual musical instrument does, jazz being a conversation between the instruments. And they really did a great job explaining all that. And the kids would ask questions like, how old were you when you started to play? And that kind of thing. So the next year, we went back to the same school, and then we started incorporating other schools. And now we take them to 3 schools. We take them to an elementary school, Snipes, and Roland Grice Middle School, and Glow High School. And that way, we kind of spread it across all of the different sections of ages of kids. And then we have our master classes. That started when Bucky Pizzarelli, who played guitar, and Jonathan Russell, our violinist, said that they would do one together. And they did, and it was great, but they both felt they wanted more time for their own, and not just jazz guitar together, jazz guitar and violin. So the next year, and I think we had it for an hour. The next year, Bucky said to me, Sandy, an hour's not enough. And I said, so you want an hour and a half? He said, no, I want 2. So that's when we started doing them for 2 hours. And now we do 8. 8 different classes. We have a jazz vocal, trombone, trumpet, clarinet and sax together, bass, percussion, which includes the vibraphone and the drums. And is that it? Is that 8? I know there were 8 this year, and that's great. It really gives kids a chance. I think we had about 70 kids in our program this year. So that too was, I felt, really a good thing. Oh, Mark Robbins? Yes, he's the photographer. He is with several, magazines, but they're internet magazines. Yeah, and he does that. and he comes and has covered ours. He's great. He has done some great photography, but he is such a nice person to work with. He goes to the schools with us, he goes to the master classes, and he just says, you tell me what you want me to take pictures of and I'll do it. And he does. And that's wonderful. We had a couple of years that were not as successful. They were all successful, but not, say, filling the whole room each night, what we do now. But I don't remember particularly why. I don't think the economy had a lot to do with it, because our attendees, half of them come from North Carolina, and half of those are local. The rest come from across the state. But the other half of our attendees come from all over the country and Canada. And we've had them from Japan and Europe that happened to be in this country and found out that there was jazz here, and so here's where they came. So it's really nice to see. And those people are here for the weekend. So it's good for local economy, because we bring in people that stay all weekend, eat in the restaurants, go to the museums and the galleries, shop. Possibly, I really don't know how many rooms they sold, but we sell enough rooms so that we don't pay for the ballroom. So that's a good thing. Well, let me tell you what it's done now. I remember 20 years ago, it was people in their 60s, and those people now are 80. But I see other people coming in now in their 60s and their 40s. So, in fact, this past year we were so pleased. We had so many people, young people that were college kids, that came in and came one night and then liked it and came back the next night. So we are attracting a younger audience, and we hope that those people will be with us until they're 80. And the fact that we are going to be bringing in younger, very successful musicians. Thursday night we will have look like younger and at the same time seasoned musicians together on the stage. So it's going to show that jazz will continue for another 40 years plus. Thursday night we're going to open with John Hill's group, and he's a local. He teaches at the university. He's the drums instructor there, and he will be bringing his group. So that's a young group. And then we will have Veronica Swift with the Emmett Cohen Trio as the main thing for Thursday night, and they will be on stage for probably 90 minutes. They are fantastic, and they are well received. In fact, Veronica has a standing gig at Birdland in New York City for any Saturday night that she's there in New York. So she is a rising star. You see, what we've done with Thursday night is make it a time to show different styles of jazz. This year, it was a Brazilian jazz, a bit of Jobim. But other years we have had, one year we had Charlie Parker with strings, his style of music. Each year we have showed different styles of music on Thursday night. Many of our patrons are musicians. In fact, he wasn't there this year, but we have one who has been coming for years. Now he's 96. So I'd say jazz is good for your health because we have quite a few older people. The trumpet player this year that was in the patron group, he's 90. And then some of them are a bit younger, but these are patrons who've been coming a long time. They are musicians, and so they really like playing with the professionals that are on the stage. They're all wonderful. The musicians, they are just so supportive of our festival. In fact, that's another thing. Why it has grown and it continues to stay doing well is because the musicians talk about it when they go to other places. And they have a following. Chuck Red is very quick to talk about our festival, and many people that like Chuck Red come just to hear him, and everybody else too, but a lot of them have people that follow them. I kind of equate it to back in the day when we used to have deadheads that followed the Grateful Dead. Well, these are our jazz heads. They follow their jazz people. Alvin? Alvin is a professor at Columbia. I've known him for a few years. He is from Goldsboro, North Carolina, originally. And he's a fiery, fun kind of drummer. And it's fun to have him on stage. He just brings a lot of joy.